We're making quick and easy pumpkin truffles that taste like pumpkin pie dipped in chocolate, but with a protein boost from cottage cheese, protein powder, and cashew butter. Hello, my name is Nicole Bonilla, and if you like healthier recipes to our favorite foods, then you are in the right place. Now, to make these really easy truffles, we're going to start by straining our pumpkin. Now, you're welcome to jot down these ingredients as we go along, or you can click on the link that's in the video description below. And that will take you to the full recipe with all the details, including nutrition facts, ingredients and substitutions, and frequently asked questions. Now, to get a delicious pumpkin flavor, we're going to use some pumpkin puree, and this is different from pumpkin pie filling. Now, the pumpkin puree has a lot of water in it, but we'll want to drain that out before we make the truffles, and it's super easy to do this. So all you need is a clean dish towel or a strainer bag, or you can just use some paper towels. So I've just taken my paper towels here and made them 3-ply. Then I have half a cup of pumpkin puree, and I'm just going to put that right in the middle of the paper towels. And then I'll just gently wrap the paper towels up and around the pumpkin puree. You can see it's already starting to leak out the liquid. And then I'll just very gently squeeze the paper towel as all of that extra water comes out. And this will really concentrate that pumpkin flavor in our truffles. And as long as you squeeze nice and gentle, it won't break your paper towels. And then we have about 1/4 cup of liquid that we drained out of half a cup of puree. And then we can just open up our paper towel, and then we're left with more of a pumpkin paste. So that only took like 2 minutes and is so worth it. Now, to mix this together, you can use any small blender or food processor, or I love using my chopper cup that comes with my immersion blender. So I'm just going to add what is now 1/4 cup of our pumpkin puree. And then for a nice protein boost as well as some creaminess, we're going to add 1/4 cup of cottage cheese. And you can use any variety that you like, large curd, small curd. And don't worry about that texture because it's all going to blend smooth. As our sweetener, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of some maple syrup. You could certainly adjust this as needed. And to help them kind of bind together and to add just a little bit more protein and healthy fat, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of cashew butter. Now, you could also use peanut butter or almond butter, but they will have a much stronger flavor to them, which is why I like using the cashew butter because the flavor is really subtle. And then for flavor, we're going to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract and a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, which just helps give it a little more tang and brings out the pumpkin flavor. And then for our seasonings, to make it taste like pumpkin pie, we'll add half a teaspoon of some pumpkin pie spice and half a teaspoon of cinnamon, but you could adjust the seasonings however you like. And then I'm going to add about 3 pinches of salt, or about 1/8 of a teaspoon. And then I'm going to put on my lid and just blend it until it's nice and smooth. And we'll know it's ready when we no longer see the little cottage cheese kernels. And now I'm just going to take out my blade. And now we can add our dry ingredients, which is 1 cup of almond flour, which gives them really delicious flavor and makes them a little lower carb, and 1/4 cup of protein powder. And you can use any protein powder that you like. I really like using this nut-based protein powder because it's organic and naturally sweetened. And I included a link in the description if you'd like to check it out. Now, if you can also omit the protein powder and just use an additional 1/2 cup of almond flour. Now I'll just take my spatula and just mix this together. So I'm doing this by hand because my little chopper blade isn't quite strong enough to get through all of this. And you'll know it's the right consistency when it looks like cookie dough, and you could take a ball of it and just kind of roll it in your hand. So that's perfect. Now, to shape the truffles, I've just taken a cookie sheet and then lined it with some parchment paper. And then you could just use a spoon and roll them into your hand and place them on the paper. Or it works really well to just use a small cookie scoop because it shapes them perfectly and they're all uniform in size. So I'm just going to fill my scoop and then just place it right on my sheet. Now, as you're forming your truffles, you can just go in with your other hand and just kind of smooth them down a little bit if needed. And that will just give you a little bit smoother surface when we dip them in the chocolate. Now, a really great shortcut if you don't want to dip these in the chocolate is to just sprinkle some mini chocolate chips right into this batter. And then just stir in the chocolate chips, roll them into little balls, freeze them, and then just enjoy them as a little cookie dough bite. And then as soon as you're done shaping and rolling all the truffles, and you should end up with about 24 if you use the little cookie scoop, we're going to put this into the freezer for about 30 minutes because we want those to be nice and chilled before we dip them in the chocolate. So for the chocolate coating, you could use any chocolate that you like. We're going to add half a cup to a microwave safe bowl. And then we're going to microwave this in 30-second intervals until it is smooth and melted. And depending on the chocolate you're using, you may or may not need to add a little bit of coconut oil to get it to a nice pourable consistency. So I'm going to put this in the microwave for 30 seconds. So after our first 30 seconds, we can see that it's starting to melt. So I'm just going to give it a good stir, just kind of move everything around. And I'll put this back in for another 30 seconds. So after our second round of 30 seconds, we can see that it's definitely starting to melt. So I can go ahead and give this a stir. And just by stirring it for about a minute, it may continue to melt completely. If not, we'll put it back in the microwave. Now I know that these chocolate chips need a little bit of coconut oil to help them thin out, so I've added a tablespoon of some coconut oil. Now you want to make sure you only use coconut oil because it solidifies when cold. Now that's nice and pourable and drippy and ready to go. Well, here's our truffles after spending 30 minutes in the freezer, and they are ready to dip. So I found it works really easy just to use a fork and a toothpick. So I'm just going to drop in the truffle upside down, flip it over with my fork, lift it up and out of the chocolate, and then I want to get all the excess chocolate that's dripping off, so I'm just going to kind of slide it against the side of the bowl, and that will help drain off any extra chocolate. Now I'll just have my toothpick ready and be able to slide it right off of my fork and back onto my parchment paper. And then we just repeat for the rest of the truffles. And then as soon as they're all dipped, you'll want to put your tray into the freezer to allow them to set. And thankfully I have some I made earlier that is ready to enjoy. That is delicious. That has the most satisfying crunch from the chocolate on the outside, and then you just bite into this really smooth and pumpkin cinnamon flavored center. And I love the depth of flavor that's coming in from that little bit of cashew butter, as well as that protein powder. And then that cottage cheese just makes it really creamy. And I love that it's made gluten-free and with clean, natural ingredients. Now, if you could use more healthy inspiration on a regular basis, I invite you to join my email list. All you have to do is click on the link in the video description below, and that is the best way for us to stay connected. And thank you for joining me today in my kitchen. I've included a link to the full recipe, and it's in the video description below, and that will take you to my website, gentletummy.com. And I also invite you to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I invite you to join me again in my kitchen.